Before we start this video, a large thank you to Andrew, David, Pedro, and Al Pacino for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hello guys, and today we're going to be concluding our Firebomb episode by actually adding explosion damage and explosion radius. So let's make a script called Bomb Damage Collider, and let's jump in right away. We're actually going to be revamping our damage system too. We're going to add a new type of damage called fire damage. So I'm going to put a namespace up here, SG, as is per tradition, going to erase the start and update functionality. And this is going to function like a damage collider, so let's make it derive from damage collider. Whoops. In case you want to inherit stuff in the future. And we're going to do a couple of things different. So let's start off by making a header. This is going to be called explosive damage and radius. So let's start off by making a few variables. The first one, a public int. Call that explosive radius. I'm going to initialize that at 1. That's how big the explosion radius is after the bomb explodes. Then a public int fire explosion damage. And if you want to, you could add a magic explosion damage. If you want to do magic damage type, or lightning explosion damage, a dark explosion damage, etc., etc. You get it. I'm not going to add those in until I actually get to the point in the video series where I need to add those damage types. So for now, I'm just going to leave them as pseudo code. Now, let's make a private bool. Let's call it has collided. We're going to initialize that at false. We want to know when the bomb has actually hit something so it can explode. And then we're going to make a couple of functions, but first, I just need to check something else out here. Let's open up our damage collider script. Where is it? Oh, right here. Okay, so let's check our awake method. All right, so we don't really need all that stuff. So I'm going to make this a protected virtual void awake. So in the future, we can actually override this while still sharing the damage collider variables and such. And what I'm going to do is I am going to go back to the bomb damage collider script, and I'm going to make a protected override awake, and I'm not going to call the base awake class. So we're just going to have this awake method run on its own independently of the class we inherit from. I'm going to say damage collider. I believe I need to make that public, or protected rather, sorry. So let's make protected. Let's make this variable damage collider protected. I'm going to say damage collider equals get component collider, just like the other wake method. But I'm also going to add another bit of logic for a rigid body, because we need a rigid body for this bomb to actually fly through the air. So I'm going to make a rigid body variable. I'm going to call it firebomb or bomb rigid body, and I will declare that in awake by saying bomb rigid body equals get component rigid body. Now we're going to use this to just basically give the bomb some upward and forward force so it will move through the air and behave like a rigid body object in space. So after we call that, we can get on to actually adding a couple of functions to the script now. Yeah, looks good. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is say on collision enter, and this is similar to on trigger enter, but it's for colliders that are not triggers. I make another void and I'm going to call it explode. So in our on collision enter, this has to be a collider because we're using it to soar through the air. It's going to move through the air. We're going to say if we have not collided, we're going to say has collided is equal to true. So the first thing we do when we know we've collided with an object is we make has collided turn to true. So we know we've collided. We can only collide once. And then we're going to make the bomb explode. So we're going to need some impact particles when we explode. So let's make a public game object impact particles. And you can store these on your bomb weapon object itself or this damage collider object. If you store them on your weapon object, you have to basically pass down the effects here after it explodes. But if not, you can store it here, and they'll already be ready when it does explode. So I'm going to store it here. We're going to say impact particles equals instantiate impact particles, comma transform dot position. Then we're going to say quaternion identity. There we go. Good. So that will instantiate some explosive effects after the bomb has touched an object. Now, you can actually make those particles rotate a certain way by using a different function, but I'll come back to that in the future if it looks wonky in the game, but that should be fine. So let's just then call our explode function, which does nothing right now, but it will in a second. And then right below that, whoops, not that, we're going to say collision.transform dot get component. We're going to look for our character stats manager, okay? Now, let's make this of type character stats manager, and let's just call this, let's just call it character, because this is a character we're colliding with. if there is one. And if we do have a character, we're going to say if character does not equal null. Well, we're going to do some logic. What we're going to want to do is actually apply an impact damage. So like when if the bomb itself hits the player, we want to do some damage. And then we're going to actually apply splash damage. So there's two types of damage, just like in Dark Souls 3. If you get hit by the bomb, it's extra damage. If the bomb hits or lands near you, you just get hit by the splash damage. So we're going to check for friendly fire, not in this video, because I'm going to do the friendly fire system in the next video. We're going to do that for our weapons as well. So we can't damage friendly phantoms, allies, etc., if you so choose to enable it. And let's go over to our damage collider script for a second here. And we're actually going to also refactor the on trigger enter damage, but we're not going to do that just yet. So for now, we'll say character.take damage, and we're just going to actually not put any number in here yet until we refactor the damage collider script itself, because we're going to basically add the addition of fire damage, which we don't have right now. So for now, we just know that this will be a spot where we take damage. I'm just going to put 0, and I'm just going to put nothing here, actually, and I'll comment this out, and we're going to come back to this. But this is where you're going to take impact damage. And then on explode, we're going to actually do some splash damage. So first we want to destroy the impact particles after 5 seconds, and we want to destroy the parent of this game object, so this gets destroyed too quite instantly, actually. And that will be fine. That should be good. Transform.parent.gameObject. Okay, so now on explode, what are we going to do? Well, we want to create a collider array, and we're going to call this, let's call this characters, because this could be any character in the explosion. And then we're going to make it equal physics.overlap sphere. So it's like an invisible sphere that pops up. We're going to make it on the transform dot position of the explosion, and then we're going to make it the radius, the explosion or explosive radius. So this will be an invisible sphere that appears when the bomb explodes. The radius will be depicted by the explosive radius. And then we're going to make a for each loop. And we're going to say for each character that's caught in this explosion, in this explosive radius, we want to deal damage to them equal to the explosive splash damage of the bomb. So very simple, very powerful, very straightforward. It's just going to create an invisible sphere on the point of explosion. And then if any characters are in that sphere at the point of explosion, we're going to say for each character in there. So for that, we'll say for each collider, objects and explosion in characters, we'll make a variable of type character stats manager. And we'll say that equals objects and explosion dot get components. It will be get component, not get component and parent. I made a mistake here. I was thinking of another project, but our collider is on the same game object as this should hit. So get component, and then we'll say if character does not equal null, we're going to simply say character.deal damage. And again, we're going to leave that commented out for now because we have to make an addition to our damage system of a type of fire damage. So we'll just say deal fire damage for now, and we'll come back to that momentarily. We will come back to that in this video, though. Okay, moving on. So we have the basis now for our bomb, and it can explode. Now let's go to the bomb, the live bomb, the firebomb _ live. Let's add a component. We're going to add... Let's add a sphere collider. It is not a trigger. That is very important. Do not make it a trigger. And we're going to add a rigid body. And then we're going to add a bomb damage collider, which is what we just made. And now if you want to, you can drag in your impact particles. I'm going to tick enable damage collider and startup, although it doesn't matter right now, at least with this form of the system. So drag in whatever explosive particles you want. I'm going to drag in this random effect I have right here. And this will be the particles that instantiate after the bomb explodes. Now, over on player weapon slot manager, okay, detect bomb damage collider. We can do that now. We can say bomb damage collider, and we're going to call it damage collider equals active bomb model, or active model bomb, sorry, dot get component and children bomb damage collider. Now, from here, we can pass down things like the damage you want to assign. That can be scaled from your player stats. We can do a whole lot of stuff from here. So we're going to add force to it first. Let's do that. Now, over on the bomb damage collider here, let's make the rigid body public so we can actually add force to it. Let's go back to the player weapon manager, and let's actually add some force to this bomb so it actually flies to this guy. Now let's say damage collider dot bomb rigid body dot add force. Let's start off with the we're going to say active bomb or active model bomb dot transform dot forward. So let's add forward force first. We're going to multiply that by the firebomb item dot forward velocity. So this is the stats you can tweak in your actual item. Then we'll say the same thing. We're going to add force, this time on the active model bomb.transform.up. And we're going to times that by the firebomb.upward velocity. So we can tweak this on the fly again. Okay, so now we already created the explosion and the splash damage effects in the bomb damage color script, so we're good. Now the only thing we have to do is check for friendly fire. So we're all good in this run for this video here now. Let's move on. We still have a lot to do though in terms of revamping our damage system. So over here on the bomb consumable item script, on the attempt to consume, let's just add a, let's go into our weapon slot manager and say weapon slot manager dot right hand slot dot unload weapon. And this is just going to make sure we hide the weapon while throwing the bomb, and then we can unhide the weapon after we've completed throwing the bomb. So that's good to go. That's a little bit of polish. Let's go over now to the place where we successfully throw the bomb, which is on the player weapon manager. And then we're going to say, we can say load, no, it will be right hand slot. We can say load weapon on slot, and then we could say player inventory dot right weapon, and then false, because it is not the left weapon. And that should load our weapon back when we're done throwing. Okay, let's start actually revamping our damage system. This is going to break everything, so don't worry, we're going to go through this step by step, but this is going to take a moment. So on our damage collider, we only have one variable now called current weapon damage. Well, we got to change that. Let's actually change this one to physical damage, because we're going to have different damage types for different kinds of things. So to make another int here, I'm going to call this fire damage. And if you want to, you can actually go ahead and add a public int for magic damage, and then a public int for lightning damage, and a public int for dark damage. Now, I will put these here, because in the future we will be using them, but I'm only going to cover physical and fire right now in this video. But if you want to refactor the system to support the rest too, by all means, go ahead and do so. It is very simple. If you can do one, you can do the rest. So I'm going to make a header up here. Actually, I'm going to save that for the next video. We have enough to do right now, so let's just continue refactoring the system. We're going to go to, let's just address these errors. All right, so on the on-trigger enter here, you can see we have our physical damage after block. It used to be current weapon damage. Well, right now it's physical damage, because that's all we have. Again, you'll have to calculate the fire damage too, because the shield can block more than physical damage. It can also block fire damage. So if you want to add fire damage absorption to your shield, just do the same thing that you did with your physical and apply it with fire damage as well. And I'm going to do that. And I don't like how we have two lots of the same logic here, but I mean we have one for a player and one for our enemy. All that separates it as a tag. We're actually going to combine those because we're kind of merging our players and enemies logic to share scripts and such. So we're going to share the same logic on a damage collision too. Just bear with me now while I see which way is the best way to go about this. Because I have a couple ways in my notes. I think we're just going to chop this whole section of the code out. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to definitely do. So we have the same thing happening here for our player. Let's actually just rename one of these tags. When I say player and enemy, of course, I mean the exact same logic is occurring here. So let's just delete everything from the enemy's logic right here, quote unquote. So go up. My mouse wheel is kind of broken. I keep scrolling up and down. Apologies for that. Now, where we say if collision tag equals player, let's just change this to character. And we're going to make both our players and enemies share the same tag for character. Now, we can change player stats manager to character stats manager because it will still work because now we share a base class. We updated that before. So now you can see how all this logic is merging together. Let's rename this to enemy stats manager. When I say enemy, I mean obviously this is the enemy you're attacking. This is the calculation of the enemy you're damaging. So if an enemy is attacking you, you will be the enemy to the enemy. If you're attacking an enemy, then they will be an enemy to you. I hope that makes sense. Change that to character stats manager, that variable type. Rename all this to enemy stats, enemy manager, and enemy effects. And now we need to change a little bit of the code here, but I think mostly we're fine. Yep, that looks good. So here we go. If you want to add fire blocking as well, we'll make a float. Fire damage after block is going to equal fire damage minus, open brackets, fire damage times shield dot blocking fire damage absorption, which we need to make. And then divide it by 100. So let's say if a shield has 50 blocking fire damage absorption, it's going to block 50% of all fire damage, 99 and 99% of all fire damage, and so on and so on. So over in the blocking collider, let's make a public float, fire absorption, or blocking fire damage absorption. And if you want to actually make a shield that has this, you will assign it on when you equip your shield, just like you would with the blocking physical damage absorption. So you guys will know how to do that by now because, again, I covered that in a previous video. It's the exact same thing as assigning physical damage absorption. Oh, there you go. You can make that divided by 100, and you're good to go. Okay, so what else we have going on here? That looks fine for now, but we're actually going to change the take damage method as well, but one thing at a time. Let's go to the character stats where we have take damage. You can see we only have one damage type. It's physical damage. Let's add an int. I'm going to call this fire damage. We're going to break everything when we do this, but again, that's okay. So, see how we calculated physical damage right here? We're going to do the exact same thing for the fire damage. And if you guys want, you can add the magic damage, lightning, and dark damage. So you can see we actually check our armor. So we're going to say float total fire damage absorption is equal to 1 minus, and we're going to open up some brackets, 1 minus, we're going to start by saying fire damage absorption head divided by 100. We don't have that made yet, so let's scroll up where we have the physical damage absorptions made. Let's copy all of them, and then let's just paste them right below. We'll change physical absorption to fire absorption in all of these, and then we'll have the ability for our armor to actually have fire absorption as well. And again, if you want to actually add this to your armor, make sure you're adding these classifications to your armor and assigning them when you equip your armor, just like you did with the physical damage absorption. I won't re-go through that because that's, again, 6 or 7 minutes of code you already know how to do. It is addressed in a previous video, and it works the exact same way. So, we're going to say 1 minus fire damage absorption head divided by 100, and we're going to do the exact same thing for the absorption body, legs, and hands. Now, we're going to have to go through all the take damage functions here, and we're going to rewrite them like this. When I say rewrite, I mostly mean add these things. And then, of course, we're going to have to go through every place we call these functions, and we're going to have to make sure we're correcting which variables are called. So this will take a moment, but when we're done, we'll have a damage system that supports a new type of damage, that being fire. Okay, now we're going to say fire damage equals mathf round to int fire damage minus, open brackets, fire damage times total fire damage absorption. And then for our final damage, you can see we made this a long time ago. We have it commented out. We can actually just erase the bracket, or the slashes here rather, and we already have the fire damage there ready to go. Now we'll actually put some. I'm going to put my pseudo or my slashes here through the rest. If you guys want to do the magic damage, lightning damage, and dark damage, now is the time to do it because it does it. It is exactly the same as the fire and absorption, or the fire and the physical damage rather. Behaves the exact same way. Okay, so on the player weapon slot manager, you can see here we're trying to assign damage. We're saying our current weapon damage is equal to our left weapon, not base damage. Well, we have more than one damage type now. So we're going to say physical damage for now. And we're going to go back later and add more than one weapon type, more than one damage type on our weapons as well. So let's go back over here on the damage collider. You can see here, again, it's looking for more than one damage type here now. So what we're going to do, it's looking for a fire damage and a physical damage. Let's put a 0 here. Now, looking back at the clip, I should have put fire damage after block in place of that 0, and I did not. I'm going to readdress that and fix that at the end of the video. And now down here under take damage, no animation, we actually didn't refactor this function yet, so all it will support is one damage type. So you can just pass the physical damage, because for now, it's not going to support anything else, but we're going to address that in a second. And now, else enemy stats.take damage, we'll say physical damage and 0. Okay. Now let's go to the take damage, no animation, and actually fix that as well. Because it should behave exactly the same way as our take damage, except it shouldn't play an animation. So let's just copy everything from current health right up to if is dead. Okay? And then on take damage, no animation, let's just paste that. Oh, yeah, this is very bare bones. Oh my goodness, I don't think we changed this when we updated the physical damage calculation either. Yeah, so just paste that right there, and that will take an account for your physical damage and fire damage absorption. Let's copy these int physical and int fire damages. We'll make it safe to pass those. And that looks good. Okay, excellent. And now, right hand damage collider dot current weapon damage should be physical damage. Save that. And now over on the character stats manager, I'm just going to copy the physical and fire damage and go back to the enemy stats manager. Let's pass that in take damage. And let's just do that here where we're calling the base take damage. Whoops. Just need them like that. There we go. Okay, that looks good. What else are we getting thrown an error for? Okay, on the take damage function here on the enemy stats manager, let's again pass these here. And again, pass these right here. So you can see it's just a lot of going back over really and adding things to the previous functions. We're just adding onto them really. Okay, looks fine. Let's see what else we have as an error. Okay, over here on the player stats manager, same thing. We got to pass these two variables here on the take damage and the take damage no animation. And then we're passing them inside the base class or the base call of the function. So we'll say physical damage and fire damage. And if you're doing it with lightning and magic, pass those as well. Same thing. Okay, physical damage and fire damage. Okay, let's save that. Now, this was actually a test script, damage player. It's completely useless, but if you want to pass it now, or if you want to just pass it so it doesn't give you an error in the console, you can. I'm just going to say we actually have to pass the damage up there and just a 0. But if not, you can just completely delete the scripts. I think we used this a long time ago to test our health when we first set it up, way back in the day. It's just a relic of times past. Okay, so now on the Animator Manager, take damage, no animation. Critical damage is always going to be physical, so we're just going to say pending damage and then comma 0. Okay, now we're going to, over here on the spell damage collider, again, all we have right now, I believe, is fireballs in the game, so they're always going to be fire damage. So we're just going to actually say 0 and then fire damage. Now, in the future, if you make magic spells, obviously you're going to want to make them magic damage based. And you can also pick the damage based on the spell type, which is what I do in my standalone project, but we'll get to that in the future. Now, on the player combat manager here, it will be right weapon dot physical damage. Okay, save that. And over here, again, right weapon dot physical damage. And save that. We actually haven't added more than one damage type yet in a weapon, which we're going to do as well before this video ends. Okay, that's all the errors now. So now let's go to our player and let's add a tag. Let's make sure the tag is, let's make a new tag. Let's call it character because now we're going to be dealing damage based on the tag character, not player or enemy. Let's change our player to a character tag. Let's change our enemy to a character tag. Now we should be able to damage each other again. All right, now over here on the bomb consumable item. I know we're jumping around a lot, guys, but we're almost done. We're going to make a public int for explosive damage because we have, I'm going to initialize that as 75, just a random number. But we have our base damage, which is the bomb damage it does when it hits you, and our explosive damage. So over here on the bomb damage collider, let's add an int. Let's call it explosive damage. Actually, we kind of have some ambiguous naming going on right here. So I'm actually going to rename both of those variables. So let's do that because right now we have explosion damage and explosive damage, and that kind of sounds a little like confusing. So let's just go back up to the top here and rename both of those before we move on and actually deal the damage. I have fire. Oh, I spelled that wrong too. Fire. Let's call that explosion damage, and let's call that. Let's call this contact damage. That does sound good. I think I can do better than that though. Actually, let's try explosion splash damage. And what do I want to rename this one? We'll call it explosion damage. I feel like that's pretty straightforward. Okay, so character dot take damage. We want to pass in over our explosion damage. So this is when the bomb hits you without like this is if it actually makes contact. This is the extra damage. Now that's going to do some damage right off the bat. And then down here in explode, we want to do splash damage. So we're going to say character dot take damage. We're going to pass a 0, no physical damage here, and we're going to pass our splash damage, explosion splash damage. So this is all fire damage based, so the first digit is a 0 because there is no physical damage being inflicted. Then over here in the player weapon slot manager, we're going to say damage collider dot explosion damage is equal to the firebomb item dot base damage. That was the wrong one. Sorry about that. It's base damage. There you go. And then we're going to say damage collider dot explosion splash damage is equal to firebomb item dot explosive damage. Okay, so the base damage is what you get when it hits you in the face, and the splash damage is the explosion damage. Hope that makes sense. Now, on our weapon item, let's delete this damage type and add physical damage. So as long as it's weapon damage, then we can add a public int for fire damage as well. And again, if you guys want to add your other damage types, go for it. So we're going to slowly just merge all of our stuff to the new system now. Now, reload our damage colliders. Well, you can see there's no more just a base damage, there's a physical damage. But we also have to pass our fire damage too. So I'll show you an example of that. Or all damage types, really. So we're going to say left-hand damage collider.physical damage equals the weapon.physical damage. But then we'll say left-hand damage collider.fire damage equals the weapon fire damage. And if you have magic damage, then you got to pass the magic damage, and so on and so on and so on. So do that for both the load left and load right weapon damage colliders for both the player and the enemy. And again, you'll have one line of code for every damage type, because the damage collider supports all damage types that you have, and the weapon should also support all damage types that your damage collider has. Some weapons might have 50 fire damage and 50 physical damage. Some weapons might have 50 lightning damage and 50 physical damage. Plus, in the future, when we buff our weapons, we give them extra damage in one of those areas depending on the buff type. So you get it. Now, when you do this, you're going to want to reset your actual physical damages on your weapon, or on your weapons, because they'll be 0. So on your sword or your butcher's knife or whatever you got on your enemies, make sure you're actually going back to the actual items and changing those again. Now, in our enemy weapon slot manager, like I said, the exact same thing. We can just paste this in here. The only thing we're doing different is we're not calling it on a player inventory manager. We save the items right here. So I think it's right hand weapon and left hand weapon. Yes. Okay, perfect. So right hand damage collider dot physical damage equals right hand weapon dot physical damage. Right hand damage collider dot fire damage equals right hand weapon dot fire damage. And then we do the exact same thing up here on the left hand damage collider, but replace the word right with left. And again, if you have more damage types, go ahead and add them now. And anywhere in the project where you reference assigning damage to your weapon, now that you have more than one damage type, make sure you're assigning all the ones that you include. Right now, this project only has fire and physical, but we will add on to it. And for some reason, I'm going to make this health bar on my player stats public, because I think it's accidentally fetching the enemy health bar sometimes on a wake. So I'm going to make it public and drag in my player's health bar manually. And in the future, I'm going to make it so the player will always fetch the player's health bar and not the other way around. There we go. Looks good. Okay, that's not supposed to happen. So basically my bombs collider was a little bit too big. It was hitting my character's hands. I'm going to change it from 0.1 to 0.07, and that should remedy all problems of it actually exploding in my hand on contact. Now, for some reason, the parents weren't actually destroying. I'm just going to try saying transform.parent.parent, because I think this is the child second time of a game object, so this might make it so the parents are actually deleting after we throw the bomb. So I'm going to try that now. Let's just go in the game here. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to get this guy's attention. I'm going to throw a bomb. And I'm going to miss. Oh, I'm going to cut this corner. Oh, goodness. Okay, I'm going to throw a bomb at him again. And there you go. He dies. Excellent. And yes, okay, it does destroy the parent of the game object now. So you'll see the bombs actually work, and they do kill the enemies. But watch this. If I throw the bomb now looking up, you'll see the bomb hits that high point. Look down. It hits a little lower. If I look down again, it hits even lower. So just like Dark Souls, the bomb actually, it will get thrown where you're looking. The higher you're looking, the higher you will actually lob the throw. So this is my solo project, and this uses the exact same code I just gave you guys in that tutorial for the bombs. So check this out. Here's me demonstrating splash damage and full contact damage. If I throw it right here, it doesn't fully hit him. It does 325 damage to this guy. However, if I throw it at this guy right here, check this out. Fully hits him, 440 damage. So you'll see if a bomb makes full contact with the enemy, it utilizes extra damage because you get the contact damage and splash damage at the same time. So, if you guys did enjoy this tutorial, please drop a like, leave a comment. It does genuinely help my series out so much. And a special thank you to my patrons. It is truly because of you guys I get to keep making these videos. So I will see you in the next one. We're going to cover team damage, and hopefully very soon we can start prototyping our archery system.